Welcome back to Ozarks tonight. I said unpeel. That's not even a word, but let's say peel back. Whatever, unpeel. God. Anyway, so talk more. Yes, exactly. Talk more about mental health, because, and I want to set this up. This is not about everybody who commits a crime like we saw over the weekend is mentally unstable or has a mental illness, because that stigmatizes mental illness, right?
Correct.
So let's put that out there first. But there is something to, okay, why are we having more of these events, right? And we're not going to have a situation where we round up all the guns. We can't be Spain. So I think it leaves us to the question of what's going on up here and how do we start to work as a society, with or without government, to reform that and help those in need.
I think one of the things that is happening, as I said, when we think about the idea of mental health, especially when we think of the persona that we've created of what does it mean to be a man in the United States. And that means you can't have a bad day and you can't talk about being mentally, unstable, because that's not manly. It's more of a feminine thing to need a day off or to need a mental break. So culturally, we go back to potentially we've put some of these things where individuals probably have not had an increase. It's not like something has changed, but instead the diagnosis and the ability to speak about it has opened up. So we're seeing a lot more of individuals being diagnosed. We don't have the capacity right now to manage and treat. It's this new kind of surgence that's come on. Just here in Springfield, we have enormous waiting lists for individuals who are finally willing and open to say, I need to speak to someone about what's going on inside. So part of it is, it's not like we all have just been broken. It's instead, I think we're finally talking about something, and now that we're talking about it, we're on a huge waiting list.
And that's an issue with government spending, because a lot of times what's happening when you look at a budget getting cut in lean times, the low-hanging fruit for those budget cuts will be things like mental health services.
Well, and in the conversation about firearms, we've got a bit of a Venn diagram here, and I think that the overlapping is much smaller than we're talking about. And there's almost two different versions of mental health we're talking about. We have the mental health that we talk about, you were touching on, and just almost mental wellness and the destigmatizing it so people aren't afraid to talk about it. But then on the other hand, every time somebody commits some sort of horrific act, we say, oh, that's mental illness. Well,
we do if it's a white man who's committed the crime.
Which generally, in these mass shootings, that's what it is.
They are. But we don't when it's someone who is not a white male who's committed the crime. So part of it even is, what are we defining as immediately we're going to jump and say, oh, mental illness versus violent crime. So that's a whole nother thing we can talk about in even a podcast, is the idea of, is there some elements that even go with how we evaluate, is it mental illness or is it just a violent act in crime?
Well, and here's what I think, that mental illness has become the easy answer.
Yes.
It has become an easy buzzword to say, oh, it's mental illness, and so we need more funding for mental illness. Those are two totally different subjects to me, whether or not we need more government funding for mental illness, and whether or not, we oftentimes hear these shooters, they'll talk about the prescription drug for depression component to it and how so many of them are on it. Well, to me, that says that those people have been treated. So even if people are treated,
medication is not treated, and that's the problem.
Well, but for some people it is.
This will be a great podcast discussion, but we got to move on because of time, and I need to ask you about what responsibility our political leaders bear. I'm not mentioning the obvious suspects in this case. I think there's enough blame on both sides to talk about things that were said at various times. And you had the shooter from the El Paso situation talking about the rhetoric in his alleged manifesto. So is it time now to be adults and to tamp down on this rhetoric once and for all, both sides?
I think absolutely. One of the things is growing up, my mom would always say when an argument was happening, and as children we were using angry language, and she would always say, are you being a peacemaker? And it was a horrible thing. We hated hearing it. And now realizing as an adult, what she was asking was, your words matter. Your words are hurting someone. So when we talk about the idea of peace, our words matter, how we use our words. And so I think as political leaders, it is a responsibility of someone that I elect or that we elect to know that their words matter And they can either create peace and they can create solution, or they can add to the problem. And I think right now, again, we go back to social media and the idea that if I create some chaos in social media, I'm getting ratings and boosted, and that is more important to me and whether or not I might get reelected than it is to what really is the value of those words, and are my words moving us into peaceful resolution and collaboration, or are they just creating more destruction?
Nick, last words.
Yeah, so two on that point. One, I think that if we're going to evaluate it, there needs to be total even application of the evaluation.
Yes.
I know there's been so much about what Trump has said. You know, the shooter in Ohio was an anti-Trump Elizabeth Warren supporter. A couple years ago, the individual tried to kill all those Republicans. You know, that's a Bernie Sanders supporter. There was an attack on an ICE detention center a few weeks ago, and that was somebody that used the talking points of Ocasio-Cortez. They're not to blame for it. But if we're going to look at what people say and their supporters, how they react, I do think it needs to be even in that application. But all that being said, I do worry a little bit about connecting the two, because to some degree, it almost sends a message that people aren't responsible for their own actions. And I think if a person is, whether you want to call them unstable, but they're in a position to where they're right there on the line and they're angry and they're upset, and they look back at how our society treats other shooters as if it's not really even their fault. It's that person's fault and that person's fault. It almost detaches them from the action that they're about to take, and I don't think that that's a good idea.
Yeah, we don't blame Jodie Foster for John Hinckley.
Right. Oh, look at that.
Just throw that out
Now
there. I'm coming back from the unpeeling. Anyway, folks, these two are featured on our podcast from the constituency, and of course, we're glad to have you both here. Nick and Amy, thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll be back after this.